Hi, I'm Unia. I missed my own graduation, 6 years of work, gone, because my sister dropped her twins on my doorstep and flew off to Europe to find herself. They said it'd be 2 weeks. It became 6 months. No one asked if I was okay. My name wasn't even on my mother's will, and the only thanks I got? A wedding invitation that called me nanny, non-attending. But the worst part? My family wasn't broken, it was coordinated. They didn't forget me, they erased me, and when one envelope arrived, everything changed. You ever wonder what it takes to reclaim the life they said was never yours? I had planned that morning for years. My cap and gown were laid out on the back of the sofa the night before, pressed and pristine. The tassel from my late father's alma mater hung neatly, a nod to the man who'd once told me, "It's not about the degree, Junia, it's about what you survived to earn it." I stared at myself in the mirror, wondering if he'd be proud. Maybe not of the job offers I'd turned down to stay close to home, but of this moment, of getting here, finally. My phone buzzed across the counter. "Hey, it's me," Celine's voice chirped, breathy and rushed. "Okay, don't freak out. The twins are a mess this morning. Talon's burning up and Serin's whining about her ear again. I called Mom, but she's headed to church, and Pierre's waiting with the car. I literally have no one else. You're the only one I trust with them. Just 2 days, okay, maybe 3. You work from home anyway. Please?" I hadn't even hit play on the second voicemail before I stopped dressing. The graduation ceremony was 3 hours away. I'd waited 6 years, nights at the hospital, weekend study groups, sacrificing every relationship I'd tried to build. And now it came down to this voicemail and that old, familiar guilt. Because when Celine says, "You're the only one I trust," it's not a compliment, it's a trap. I sat on the edge of my bed, dress half-zipped, and texted my professor. "Something came up. I won't make it." 10 minutes later, I tossed my gown back in the closet, pulled on jeans, and drove across town. Celine's townhouse was still cluttered with shopping bags from her Paris reset trip. The twins were sitting on the floor in mismatched pajamas, Serin's face flushed, Talon curled up on the rug with a tablet in his lap. Their backpacks were half open, stuffed with a few diapers, some applesauce pouches, and a half-filled sippy cup. "Mom said you'd come," Seren whispered as I knelt down to wipe her nose. Celine didn't even come to the door. I heard her heels on the hardwood as she rushed down the stairs, dragging a leopard print suitcase behind her. "You're a lifesaver! Seriously!" she said, planting a kiss on my cheek without pausing for breath. "Their pediatrician's number is on the fridge, sort of. Actually, I think I left it on a post-it in the car. Pierre's honking. I'll text you when I land. Love you." The door slammed. And just like that, I missed my own graduation so my sister could board a yacht in Santorini with a man she'd met 6 weeks ago on Instagram. No applause, no stage walk, no photos of me with the dean or framed certificate, just a bottle of children's Tylenol and a cold grilled cheese. Around lunchtime, Talon threw up on the living room carpet. Seren had a full-on meltdown when I tried to brush her hair. I cleaned, held them, reheated frozen waffles, and took 3 calls from clients I couldn't reschedule. I checked my phone. 32 unread messages. Most were from classmates. "Where are you? We're lining up. They called your name." They called my name, to an empty chair. That night, after I finally got the kids to sleep, Seren clutching her bunny, Talon curled against the wall, I went home just long enough to shower and return with clean pajamas. My apartment still had the graduation decorations taped to the walls. A half-deflated balloon bobbed near the ceiling. The next day, Vera stopped by with a smile and a Ziploc bag. "I picked this up for you at the ceremony," she said, handing me my diploma, already laminated. "Didn't want to make a fuss, you know. Your sister's been through so much lately. It's better this way." I turned it over. A sticky note was taped to the back. "Didn't want to upset your sister. Love, Mom." The bag of craft supplies Vera brought for the twins was labeled in Sharpie, "Art Bin." My diploma was stuffed between finger paints and broken crayons. I didn't say a word. I didn't ask why no one called to say, "Congratulations." Why Celine didn't send flowers or even a text. I didn't scream or cry or demand fairness. I just folded the gown, still stained from Seren's juice spill, and hung it next to a diaper bag by the door. I used to think disappearing was dramatic, like a door slamming, a suitcase rolling down steps. But sometimes it's quieter. It's missing from a photo. It's a name not read aloud. It's a day you earned being erased because someone else's needs are louder than your value. My phone buzzed again. A photo from Celine, sun-drenched, laughing, cocktail in hand. "You handled that like a pro," she wrote. "Seriously, couldn't have done it without you." The screen faded to black, but inside me something had cracked open for good. It started with a cough that didn't sound like the others. You know the kind, wet, persistent, too deep for comfort. Talon was sitting cross-legged on the floor after snack time, clutching his chest between hacks. Seren sat beside him, quietly picking the crust off a sandwich she didn't want. I froze for a moment, watching, listening. Then I dropped the plate in the sink and crouched in front of him. "Breathe in for me, baby. Slow." He tried. He really did. But the wheeze came out jagged, like something trying to escape his lungs that shouldn't be there. We were in the car within 10 minutes. I didn't even change out of my coffee-stained tee. Seren sobbed the entire ride, terrified more of the panic in my voice than her brother's breathing. Talon slumped in his booster seat, unusually quiet, eyes glassy. At the ER intake window, the nurse looked up from her keyboard without a flicker of concern. "Insurance card?" I hesitated. "His mom didn't leave one." "I have some paperwork." "Legal guardian?" "I've been watching them. Their mother's out of the country." She paused. "Are you authorized to sign for emergency treatment?" The line behind me grew. Someone sighed. Seren sneezed onto my shoulder. I handed over my driver's license, trying to sound calm. "Look, he's wheezing. He's barely responsive. Can we get him seen and figure out the billing after?" 3 forms, a clipboard, and a pen I could barely hold steady. When the doctor finally called us back, I followed him into the sterile white room with laminated posters about asthma and food allergies. I clutched Talon's backpack like it held answers. It didn't. Just a granola bar and a crumpled coloring book. They gave him a nebulizer, monitored him, mentioned the word bronchial spasms like it was Tuesday and not the scariest moment of my month. Seren curled into my side, eyes darting between me and the machines. The nurse came back with the payment estimate. I handed over my credit card. My hands were still shaking. That card was meant for a down payment on a used Subaru I'd been eyeing, something with fewer miles than the Honda I drove into the ground during nursing school. But that morning, it paid for Talon's ER visit. That's how fast priorities shift when you're the only adult in the room. While they kept Talon under observation, I stepped into the hallway to get air and maybe reclaim a shred of composure. I pulled out my phone. Celine had just posted on Instagram. There she was, all sunshine and gloss, long legs stretched on a yacht in the Aegean, champagne in hand, white designer cover-up falling off one shoulder. Caption: "Self-care isn't selfish. Remember to prioritize you." The fury didn't come all at once. It crept in. Not hot, not loud, but cold, measured. And I realized then, I hadn't just sacrificed my graduation. I'd become the plan, not the backup, the plan. Another parent in the waiting room caught my eye and smiled. "You're doing great. Your little guy's lucky to have you." I didn't know how to answer. I wasn't their mom, but I couldn't imagine anyone else showing up. Later that night, after we got home and the twins were finally asleep, Talon still wheezing lightly, Seren clinging to her worn stuffed bunny, I went digging for the folder Celine said had everything they need. It was in the hall closet, wedged between old swimsuits and a broken curling iron. Inside, expired insurance cards, no emergency contacts, one medical form, unsigned, a sticky note labeled "Peanuts maybe," and a crumpled appointment reminder from 5 months ago. I sat on the living room rug, the folders spread out around me. This was it. This was what she left behind, not just her kids, but the blueprint to their care, written in half-inked guesses and scribbles. I started scanning everything. I created folders on my laptop. I sorted receipts, bills, prescription logs, time-stamped every phone call and message. I wasn't just picking up the pieces. I was preparing for whatever came next, because no one was going to make me feel crazy again for noticing a disaster before it happened. Around 11 p.m., I crept into the twins' room. The nightlight threw soft shadows on the wall. Talon was curled on his side, one hand balled into a tiny fist. Seren had kicked off her blanket. I covered her gently, then pulled a chair close to Talon's bed. I sat there in silence, watched the rise and fall of his chest, listened to the faint rasp that still lingered. My hand found his, and he held it, even in sleep. I'm not their mother, but I'm the one who held them through the night. Who bought the medicine, signed the forms, made sure they woke up. The screen on my phone lit up again. A new message from Celine. Headed to Greece tomorrow. Pierre booked a private villa this time. You're a lifesaver. I stared at her message, and something inside me shifted from silence to strategy. A week after Talon's ER scare, Vera invited me to stop by the house for a little family catch-up. Her tone on the phone was unusually sweet, which I'd learned from experience meant either someone was getting married or someone wanted something. I didn't ask questions. I just said yes. When I arrived, the living room was already staged like a church committee meeting. Aunt Laurel was seated stiffly on the floral armchair, hands folded neatly over a pleated skirt. Two neighbors I vaguely recognized from Vera's weekly Bible study sat on the sofa, and Vera had arranged a tray of lemon bars like we were hosting a bake sale instead of a family reckoning. Above the fireplace hung a large portrait of Dad. His expression, as always, unreadable, like he'd already seen how this would play out. I barely got my purse off my shoulder before Aunt Laurel jumped in. We've all been following what's been happening, sweetheart, and bless you for stepping up like you have. But let's not forget, Celine is still their mother, still, as if abandonment had an expiration date. I haven't forgotten, I replied calmly, though I felt the heat rising in my chest. But I'm the one they wake up to every morning, the one their school calls, the one who— You've always been the stable one, Junia, Vera cut in, like she was offering a compliment. We knew you'd manage. I looked around the room. Not one person asked how the kids were doing. Not one person mentioned Talon's breathing or Saren's nightmares. It wasn't a check-in, it was a containment strategy, polite enough to disguise its intention, but clear as glass once you'd been on the receiving end enough times. Then Vera lit up. Let's call Celine. She'll be thrilled you're here. Before I could object, she'd tapped FaceTime and was holding her phone out like a trophy. Celine answered on the third ring, lounging in a spa robe, face dewy and glowing. I could hear wind chimes in the background and the faint lapping of water. Oh, wow, a full house, she said, smiling into the screen. Hi, Junia. Look at you, still being Wonder Woman. I'm just trying to keep your kids healthy, I said, keeping my voice even. Celine sipped something from a stemmed glass. Junia, don't start drama. You know I needed this. Pierre said I was losing myself. Someone from the room chuckled, and I felt something in me recoil. I excused myself before I said something I couldn't take back. Later that week, I hosted a small birthday tea for the twins, just cupcakes, juice boxes, and construction paper hats. It wasn't Pinterest perfect, but they laughed and danced and smeared frosting on everything. I'd spent the whole night before wrapping their gifts, a watercolor set for Seren and a remote control car for Talon. Right before we sang Happy Birthday, our neighbor Mrs. Barnes dropped by holding a wrapped box. Celine asked me to bring this over. She picked it out special, she said with a wink. I didn't say a word, just took the box and placed it on the pile. After the kids went to bed, I opened it. Inside was the exact art kit I'd bought for Seren, same brand, same torn corner from where I'd removed the price sticker. The wrapping paper was from my own supply drawer. Celine had taken credit. Again, I didn't yell, I didn't rage post, I didn't call her and demand answers, I started documenting. That night, I opened a folder on my laptop and labeled it Legal, just in case. I uploaded photos of the art kit, scanned the receipts, took screenshots of every thank you text she'd sent. I added notes with dates and timestamps. I organized medical bills, daycare sign-in sheets, and the incident report from the hospital. I printed out her yacht posts. Everything she tried to bury with sparkle, I made permanent. I wasn't preparing for war. I was building a record, the kind no influencer filter could erase. A few nights later, I was up late sorting bills when my laptop pinged. Celine had tagged me in a post, a black and white photo of her holding the twins at the beach, taken 2 years ago. Caption: couldn't do this motherhood thing without my sis. I stared at the screen and realized this wasn't just family. It was branding. The envelope was thick, expensive, cream-colored with embossed gold edging. It came on a Thursday, slipped through my front door mail slot and landing with an almost ceremonial thud. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Celine's wedding invitation. I already knew it was coming. She'd dropped hints in her messages, something about a chateau in southern France, a dress from Milan, the guest list being intimate but photogenic. But nothing prepared me for the line printed under my name in the back flap insert. Special thanks, nanny of the twins, non-attending. I didn't flinch. I didn't drop it. I just stood there, eyes scanning it again and again, making sure I wasn't hallucinating. That's what made it worse. It was printed, reviewed, approved. It wasn't even a joke. It was a decision, not even a seat in the back row. Just a footnote, a function. I placed the invitation on my kitchen counter, sat down, and stared at it while Talon and Saren watched cartoons in the other room. Every few minutes I looked over to make sure they were still breathing, something their actual mother hadn't done in months. I folded the invitation carefully, as if preserving the insult. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because the tears had somewhere to go now. They had direction. A few days later, I met a man named Kyle. He was an architect, the quiet kind, thoughtful eyes, neat handwriting, liked dogs. We met at the coffee shop near my clinic, bonded over mutual annoyance at how long it took to get a drink on weekends. We started talking. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. He asked if I wanted to grab dinner sometime. I said yes. We went out that Saturday. Easy conversation, shared dessert, not a single mention of his ex or mine. By the second drink, I thought, maybe this was something. A crack in the fog. Then he asked about my life, my day-to-day, and I told him about the twins, about raising them while their mother found herself in Europe, about the hospital run, the forgotten allergy records, the missing insurance. He didn't say much in the moment, just nodded, eyes shifting a bit. He asked how long I'd had them. I said, about 7 months. The next morning, he sent a text. You're incredible, but I think I need some time. This feels like more than I'm ready for. I never heard from him again. That night, I journaled. Even potential love feels like a burden I have to explain. The next morning, I called Vera. I read the invitation aloud to her over the phone, word for word. My voice trembled, but I made it through. There was silence. Then a small sighing. Oh, honey, I'm sure she didn't mean it that way. I bit my tongue hard enough to taste metal. She meant every single word, and you know it. Another pause. Then, the familiar fallback. Just don't start drama before the wedding. I didn't hang up hard. I didn't yell. I just let the silence sit on the line, then ended the call quietly. That evening, I sat at my desk and added the invitation to the legal, just-in-case folder. Then I opened a voice memo app on my phone and began to record everything I'd done since the twins arrived. Not because I thought someone would ask, but because I knew no one would, and I'd need to have my own receipts. I listed the medical appointments, the school pickups, the peanut scare, Saren's night terrors, Talon's asthma treatments, the missed calls, the text chains, the groceries, the rent. Every time I filled out a field trip form or took a late-night call from a nurse, I saved it. That night, I emailed Maribel. Subject line, need to discuss parental rights. And for the first time since this all began, I didn't feel like I was on defense. I wasn't begging anyone to see me. I was done asking for inclusion. I opened a new Word doc and titled it, Guardianship Violation Timeline, Day 1. If they wouldn't hear me as family, they'd hear me in court. It arrived on a Tuesday, hand-delivered by a courier who smiled like he was dropping off flowers. A manila envelope with a bright yellow smiley face sticker on the front. That was Celine's signature move, cheerful packaging for a poisoned pill. I opened it on the kitchen counter while Saren colored beside me, and Talon tried to twist open a jar of peanut butter with 2 hands and his teeth. Inside was a set of official-looking documents, temporary delegation of parental authority, printed in soft pastel fonts like it was a school newsletter. The fine print was buried in the 3rd paragraph, but I caught it. If I signed it, I'd be waiving my ability to contest any future relocation. Celine would retain full parental rights. She could take the kids abroad, France, Italy, wherever she decided the next season of her life belonged, and I'd have no legal standing to object. They called it delegation. I called it a trap. I didn't scream. I didn't tear it up. I took pictures of every page, scanned them into my laptop, and dropped them into the legal folder I'd been building since the day I missed my own graduation. That evening, while reheating mac and cheese, I heard a knock. It wasn't the usual neighborly knock. It was firm, official. I opened the door to find a woman in a navy jacket holding a clipboard. "Child Protective Services," she said, flashing her badge like I was about to bolt. I didn't. She stepped inside with practiced calm, glancing around my living room, where toys were scattered, but nothing looked unsafe. "We received a report that 2 minors are residing here without proper guardianship." From behind her, Mrs. Garver waved sheepishly from her porch. "I was just concerned," she called out, voice wobbling. "You know how people talk." The CPS officer took a seat, opened her folder, and asked for documentation. I didn't blink. I pulled out a 3-ring binder from the bookshelf. Medical records, insurance claims, his school sign-in sheets, allergy reports, photos, texts from Celine, screenshots of her requests, her disappearances, her "thank you sis lifesaver" messages. The woman flipped through each page, her expression unchanged, but her silence told me everything. I was more organized than half the parents she'd met with court orders. She stood to leave, saying simply, "Thank you for your cooperation." But as I shut the door behind her, I felt hollow. I had just defended myself like a criminal. For doing the work of a mother, I had to prove I wasn't stealing someone else's children. That night, after the twins were in bed and the dishwasher hummed in the background, I called Maribel. I didn't wait for pleasantries. "I got paperwork from Celine. It's a setup." Maribel didn't hesitate. "Don't sign anything. I've seen this before. Language that makes you look like a nanny, not a guardian. She's preparing to move them." "Internationally, if I had to guess." My pulse thudded in my ears. "She won't even call them. Now she wants to fly them across the world?" "She doesn't want them," Maribel said. "She wants control." We talked for another 20 minutes, forming the skeleton of a plan. Preemptive guardianship review, court filings, timeline proof. After hanging up, I opened the scanned documents again. I read every line with a highlighter in one hand and my journal open in the other. No one else was going to write my story again. I backed up every file onto an encrypted drive, then uploaded them to cloud storage. Double proof, triple prepared. Finally, I opened the voice memo app on my phone and pressed record. "This is Junia Cooper. I'm the sole caretaker of Talon and Saren. I'm documenting that I have declined to sign a delegation of authority that would permit their biological mother, Celine Winchester, to relocate them without legal consultation or oversight. I refuse to erase the months I've lived with them, nurtured them, advocated for them, protected them, just to make her re-entry into motherhood convenient." I paused, breathed in. This isn't about fairness. It's about facts. I saved the file. Just as I was closing my laptop, my phone vibrated. A new voicemail from Celine. I played it on speaker. Her voice was breezy, careless. "Paris is calling. Pierre wants the twins here before August. Let's make this easy, okay?" Easy? No. This time, it would be legal and loud. It started with a shoebox. I was organizing the kids' closet late one night, folding pajamas and sorting out Seren's 2 small sweaters to donate, when I reached for a dusty box marked "Mice" in faded marker. I assumed it was old puzzles or mismatched socks, but buried underneath a pile of broken crayons, wrinkled construction paper, and a plastic tiara missing 2 jewels, I found it. My graduation invitation, torn down the middle. One edge curled and yellowed, and on the back, in bold Sharpie, Celine had written, Handled. I held it in my hands for what felt like hours, not because I was shocked, but because the memory came rushing back so clearly I could hear the sound of her heels on the hardwood. That day, the day she dropped off the kids and my future in one breath, she'd snatched it from the kitchen counter like it was junk mail. I hadn't even noticed at the time. I was too busy changing diapers and canceling a milestone. Some erasures aren't accidental. They're calculated. The next evening, my phone buzzed with a FaceTime ring. I picked up, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to see where her head was. Celine appeared on screen from a boutique in Paris, spinning slowly in front of a mirror. "What do you think of this neckline?" she asked, angling her phone. "Too bridal wedding? Or more yacht wedding chic?" I opened my mouth to mention Serene's cough, the one that had kept her up the past 3 nights. But Celine cut me off. "Oh, can you measure Talon's inseam tonight? Pierre's mom wants the tuxes ordered by Monday. You'll ship them, right? I'll Venmo." "No, how are they?" "No, are they sleeping?" "No, do they even remember my voice?" "Just fabric, fittings, and freight." "I'm not measuring them for a wedding they're not attending," I said flatly. Celine rolled her eyes. "God, Junia, do you have to be so rigid? Just help me out. We're family." And with that, I hit the red button. The kids were sitting on the rug behind me, quietly watching. Talon looked up and asked, "Did Mommy say hi?" I shook my head. Not this time. After they went to bed, I pulled out the torn invitation and laid it on the kitchen table. I smoothed the creases. I thought about throwing it away. But instead, I went to the junk drawer, found glue sticks, and started piecing it back together. Halfway through, Serene padded out of her room in her bunny pajamas. "What's that?" she asked, peering at the table. "My graduation," I said quietly. She watched me press the pieces together, then disappeared for a second. When she returned, she was holding a handful of crayons and scotch tape. "We can fix it," she said, and began taping the corners. Talon wandered out soon after, rubbing his eyes. "We helping?" We did. The 3 of us. No ceremony, no applause, just glue, tape, and quiet forgiveness I hadn't asked for, but desperately needed. Later that night, after the house settled back into silence, I sat down at my laptop and drafted an email to Maribel. Subject: Exhibit C, Pattern of Erasure and Discrediting. I attached a photo of the torn and reassembled invitation. I uploaded the call recording where Celine spent 7 straight minutes describing her gown, shoes, and table settings, never once mentioning her kids. Then I wrote the words I'd been rehearsing in my head for weeks. She's not a neglectful mother because she's overwhelmed. She's neglectful because she prioritizes appearances over presence. And this pattern isn't passive, it's strategic. It's branding. I hit send. 10 minutes later, Maribel replied, "We file next week. Emergency guardianship petition. I'll prep the paperwork. You be ready." I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. For the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was building the case. I woke up to war in my inbox, dozens of DMs, mentions, emails from old classmates I hadn't spoken to in years. I tapped one open with a trembling thumb and saw her face, Celine's face, posed in soft lighting, eyes glassy like she'd just finished crying, but still looked camera-ready. She'd posted a carousel. Image 1, her holding a framed photo of the twins as babies. Image 2, her sitting on a balcony, arms folded, lips pursed in heartbreak. Image 3, an old video of Saren's first steps. The caption read, "Every day without them is a wound. My sisters turned them against me. Please pray for us. #Mom Life. #Stolen Motherhood. #Fighting Back." I stared at it, stunned. Not because it was untrue, but because it was so cleanly crafted. She knew exactly what to post, when to post, and who would repost it. She had weaponized nostalgia. Within minutes, the comments rolled in. "Stay strong, Mama. This is what toxic siblings do. Praying for your babies. Why would someone keep kids from their mother? That's disgusting." Then came the private messages from people I'd gone to high school with, coworkers I hadn't seen in months. I had no idea you were keeping the kids from her. Are you really doing this to your own sister? Thought you were better than this, Junia. I didn't respond. Not yet. I needed to breathe. I was halfway through deleting a third email when my phone rang. Vera. Of course. Her voice was low and almost shaky. I saw the post, sweetheart. I didn't know it was that bad for her. It isn't, I replied. She's your sister, Junia. She's in pain. And I'm not? My tone cracked for the first time that morning. She gets sympathy because she tells a story with filters and sad music. I tell the truth and people call me bitter. Vera sighed. Can't you just try to see her side? I hung up before she finished the sentence. I didn't need to hear it again. Not from her. Not today. And the irony was, Celine hadn't called the twins once in the past 3 weeks. Not for Serene's art award, not for Talon's dentist appointment, not even to ask if they were eating okay. But then Halloween came. It was Talon's favorite holiday. He'd been talking about his dragon costume for weeks. Serene had chosen to be a monarch butterfly with glittery wings we found on sale. Celine had promised to FaceTime. Right when they're dressed, she'd texted. Can't wait to see them. So we waited. We set the tablet on the coffee table, the kids standing beside it in full costume. Talon kept checking the screen. Serene asked twice if she should fix her wings. The call never came. At 8:22 p.m., Celine posted a photo. She was in Ibiza, dressed as Cleopatra, holding a cocktail with a gold straw, posing with 2 influencers I vaguely recognized from a reality show. Talon saw it first. She forgot again, he whispered, and walked to his room without another word. Serene didn't say anything, just quietly unstrapped her wings and laid them on the floor. That night, I opened a new folder on my desktop. I titled it, Public Image versus Private Neglect. I saved every post, every timestamp, every missed call. I organized them by date, labeled screenshots, added context. I wasn't saving them out of spite. I was saving them for court. Later, I sent the whole package to Maribel. Her reply came 5 minutes later. We're about to break her facade in court. It felt like confirmation, not comfort. But then, just before midnight, another ping, an email from Celine's attorney. Subject, Emergency Custody Counterpetition filed. They used to call me the quiet one. Now I'm the dangerous one, with receipts. When we walked into the courthouse that morning, I wasn't wearing anything that said Mother of the Year. Just a plain navy blazer I'd borrowed from Maribel's office, my hair pulled back, and a binder clutched in my hand labeled Guardianship Filing, Cooper, Junia. No makeup, no rehearsed tears, just facts. Stay factual, Maribel had whispered as we waited for our case to be called. They expect emotion. Surprise them with clarity. I nodded. My legs weren't shaking. My hands didn't sweat. I had lived too much of this already for nerves. The courtroom was sterile, but humming with tension. The buzz of the overhead lights, the rustle of paper, the coughs from strangers watching. Celine swept in 5 minutes late, in a tailored cream suit, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown, Pierre trailing behind her like a lost intern. She blew Vera a kiss, then sat beside her lawyer, crossing her legs with practiced poise. When they called our case, Celine's attorney rose like he was addressing a jury at a televised trial. My client, Mrs. Celine Winchester, returns now, rehabilitated, grounded, and emotionally renewed after a necessary but painful season of personal healing, he began, voice dripping with affect. She never abandoned her children. She entrusted them temporarily to her sister, trusting that family would care for family, not turn the situation into a custody coup. He painted me as the villain, a bitter sister seeking motherhood by proxy, a woman capitalizing on her sister's moment of vulnerability. The words were barbed silk. They'd been written long before we ever entered that room. Then Maribel stood, calm and cool. We'd like to submit into evidence a letter written by Mr. Lawton Cooper, father to both parties, dated June 2016. She handed the envelope to the clerk, and the judge, an older woman named Kincaid, adjusted her glasses. As the letter was read aloud, the courtroom seemed to stop breathing. If Emma ever abandons her children for more than 90 days, the judge read, I authorize transfer of their care and all assets associated to Junia. Murmurs erupted. Celine's lawyer froze mid-note. Celine herself went still, her practiced expression faltering for the first time since this began. Maribel added, "We also submit flight records, text messages, and photographic evidence showing Ms. Winchester's absence extended well beyond the time frame specified in Mr. Cooper's will." Celine's attorney tried to pivot, but the tone had shifted. Then came the moment that truly mattered. Talon and Seren were invited to speak privately with Judge Kincaid. I waited outside, heart pounding not from fear of what they'd say, but from knowing they would tell the truth. When they returned, Judge Kincaid took a sip of water, then addressed the room. "For the record, Mr. Talon stated, "She didn't call when I broke my arm." Mr. Seren said, "Aunt Junia doesn't forget to hug me." I didn't cry, but I saw Vera remove her pearl necklace slowly, quietly. A gesture that said what her words hadn't. She'd chosen a side, and it wasn't Celine's. Judge Kincaid's gavel came down like punctuation. "Until further order, temporary custody is granted to Ms. Junia Cooper. Ms. Van Winchester's visitation will be limited to supervised sessions pending psychological evaluation and parenting review." Celine stood. "You can't do this. I'm their mother." Judge Kincaid didn't blink. "Biology is not presence. Mothering is action." Court adjourned. Outside, a reporter stood near the courthouse steps, camera rolling. I tried to walk past, but he called out, "Ms. Cooper, any comment on being granted guardianship over your influencer sister's kids?" I stopped. Turned. "They're not content," I said, looking straight into the lens. "They're children." I walked away from the camera, but my voice stayed behind. There were no balloons, no high fives, no toasts clinking in quiet celebration. After court, we went straight home. I made grilled cheese, the twins colored at the kitchen table like it was any other Tuesday, and the silence between us wasn't awkward, it was unfamiliar. The kind of quiet that comes after an earthquake, when everything's still standing, but nothing feels steady. Winning custody didn't win back the time. That week, I tried to build structure. Routine. Familiarity. I dropped them off at day camp in the mornings, packed lunches with notes scribbled inside. I let Seren pick out dinner menus. I bought Talon a new nightlight shaped like a moon, even though he said he was too old for it. They smiled. They laughed. But something small inside them still flinched every time the phone buzzed. One afternoon, Talon's teacher waved me down in the pickup line. "He dropped this in class," she said, handing me a worn leather wallet with scuffed corners. It had this inside. Tucked inside was a small, wrinkled photo, clearly torn from a larger sheet. It was me, holding Talon in my lap, a wet washcloth pressed to his forehead, my eyes exhausted. He must have been about 4, red cheeks flushed with fever. Celine wasn't in the picture. I stared at the image for a long time that night. Even when they couldn't speak, they remembered who stayed. 2 days later, we had our first full appointment with Dr. Gina Martinez, the child therapist Maribel had recommended. Her office smelled like cinnamon and lavender, a place clearly built to soften the weight of whatever kids carried inside. She sat across from me with a legal pad filled with notes and a gaze that didn't blink. "I'll be honest, Junia," she said. "They're not just struggling with change, they're struggling with abandonment patterns. Seren exhibits signs of emotional detachment. Talon's hyper-vigilant. We're looking at potential reactive attachment disorder. Possibly dissociation symptoms." I didn't interrupt, I just sat with it. "They're not just missing her," she continued. "They're trying to rewire themselves to survive being missed." I nodded slowly. "Can we fix it?" Her voice softened. "It's not about fault anymore. It's about repair. And you're already doing the hardest part, staying." I left the office and cried the whole way home. Not because I was overwhelmed, because it was finally spoken out loud. When we got back, the twins ran to the backyard and disappeared into their fortress of cardboard boxes. I sat on the porch, phone buzzing with missed calls I didn't bother to return. Later that night, Maribel called. "You've seen it?" she asked, her voice half laughing, half incredulous. "Seen what?" A TikTok clip, someone edited your court moment into a viral reel. That quote you gave the reporter? They're not content, they're children? It's everywhere. I rubbed my temples. I didn't ask for that. No, but it's working. She's getting dragged across comment sections. The influencers are backpedaling. Her brand deals are falling through. Turns out, when you market yourself as a mother and disappear from motherhood, the internet notices. I didn't say much else. The high I should have felt wasn't there. It wasn't joy. It was just justice catching up. A few minutes later, Talon came into my office, barefoot and quiet. Hey, I said softly, can't sleep? He shook his head and held up his phone. Can you show me how to save a photo on this? The one of us, the one where I was sick, and you held me. I don't want to lose it again. I smiled. Yeah, baby, I can do that. I nodded, then opened my cloud drive. Not just to save his memory, but to make sure mine never disappeared again. I didn't plan to watch it live. The Women of Strength award ceremony was being streamed from a conference center 2 states away, some wellness brand's annual event, featuring speakers, influencers, and mothers who embody resilience. The twins were building a fort out of couch cushions. I had dinner simmering on the stove. But someone tagged me in a clip, and curiosity won. There she was. Celine, standing on stage in a blush pink pantsuit, accepting an engraved glass plaque. Behind her, a massive screen cycled through pictures. Baby Talon in a blanket, Seren grinning with frosting on her chin. The 2 of them asleep on my living room couch. My couch. The voiceover from the host praised Celine as a single mother who, despite personal challenges, has fought to rebuild her relationship with her children through grace and grit. I sat completely still. The photo they used of Talon recovering from the flu, she hadn't even been in the country when that was taken. I had held him through 5 nights of fever and fear, and now here she was, collecting applause for it. I didn't react with rage. I opened my laptop and took screenshots. Every frame, every slide, every quote. Within hours, the backlash began. The internet has a way of sniffing out polish layered over rot. By evening, the same video that earned her standing ovations had been dissected and re-uploaded with captions like, "Where was she for 6 months?" and "Abandonment isn't empowerment." One of the parenting blogs published a timeline. Celine's Instagram photos matched against court records, missed school events, and hospital visits. The comments rolled in fast and hard. She skipped Halloween to party in Ibiza, and now she's your role model? Cosmetic care queen, but couldn't call her kids? This isn't motherhood. It's marketing. Maribel called me, not hiding her amusement. We didn't have to do a thing, she said. They did it for us. I didn't gloat. It wasn't a win I celebrated, just a mask finally slipping. That night, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Vera standing there, eyes red, shoulders tense. I didn't call, she said, because I didn't know if I'd follow through. She walked in without waiting for an answer, sat at the kitchen table, and placed a manila folder in front of me. I found these in the basement, Celine's original custody papers from when she tried to get full rights years ago, and this. She slid out a handwritten letter. It was from my dad. To Vera, if something ever happens and Celine spirals again, Junia is the one who will show up. I've watched her love when she hasn't been loved back. She doesn't seek credit. That's how I know she's the right one. Vera's voice was quiet. I knew it even before I found that. I protected the wrong daughter. I didn't hug her. I didn't cry. I just said, "You're late. But I'll take real over perfect any day." 2 days later, Celine posted a final story. She was sitting in her car, makeup smudged, voice shaking. "I'm taking a break from public life," she said. "People don't understand. They only see what they want. I tried." And then she was gone. Digitally, at least. Her comment section vanished. Brand deals went silent. The influencer bubble popped. I didn't need her erased. I just needed her out of the way. That afternoon, Talon drew a picture of a house with 3 people, me, him, and Seren. Saren added a line beneath it in crayon. Home is who stays. And just when I thought the day had closed, a letter arrived from Wake County Family Court. Official seal, bold type. Request for final review. Petition for permanent guardianship status. I held it for a moment before opening it. It wasn't revenge, it was reality. And this time, it had my name on it. The letter came in a plain envelope. No stickers, no ceremony. Just a beige rectangle with my name typed neatly across the front and a return address from my mother's estate attorney. I waited a full hour before opening it. The twins were coloring on the porch. I had just folded a load of laundry, the smell of warm cotton still clinging to my sleeves. I sat at the kitchen table, opened the envelope, and slid the contents out with steady hands. It was an early draft of Vera's will. Dated the year Selene gave birth to the twins. Celine's name was there, of course, listed as primary guardian, sole beneficiary of the small family trust, executor of Vera's wishes. My name? Not once. Not even as an alternate contact. I wasn't even a footnote. The air around me changed. It wasn't anger. It wasn't hurt, exactly. It was beyond clarity. Cold and undeniable. Being invisible isn't the same as being gone, but it sure makes you question what was ever real. Later that afternoon, I met with Maribel in her office. I handed her the will, said nothing. She flipped through it, eyes narrowing. It's legal, she said, but intentional. It was never corrected, not after the hospital stay, not after the custody hearings, not after you moved your entire life to raise her children. I nodded. I know. You okay? I thought about lying. Then I said, no, but I'm clear. That night I walked through my house, the hallway where Seren had taped her drawings, the fridge covered in lunch menus and permission slips, Talon's Lego tower collapsing half-finished on the living room rug. It was messy, and it was mine. They didn't choose me, I whispered to the stillness, but these kids did. And so did I. Around 8 p.m., my phone buzzed. Vera. I let it ring twice before picking up. Junia, she said. I was hoping you might come to Celine's therapy review session next week. The counselor thinks it would show goodwill. I blinked. You want me to sit in a room and validate the woman who erased me? She's making progress. She's trying. So am I said flatly. Tell her I'll meet her in court, not in confession. I ended the call, then opened the desk drawer where I'd tucked the envelope. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply took a lighter from the kitchen, opened the fireplace door, and watched the paper curl and blacken as I fed it to the flames. Page by page, I let it burn, all but one. A post-it note fell from between the pages, pale pink, smudged from years of being pressed between sheets. It read, Dinner in fridge. I know you'll handle it, Mom. I kept that, pasted it in the back of my journal, and wrote beneath it, I always did. An hour later, as the house settled into the stillness of bedtime, Talon walked into my office holding a bright blue envelope from school. They're having a family event next week, he said. They want you to come, will you? I pulled him in close. I already am the family. He smiled, satisfied, and wandered off to brush his teeth. I sat back in my chair, hand resting on the journal, flames still flickering low in the hearth. I didn't need to be written into their legacy. I was already building one of my own. The courtroom was quieter than I expected. No cameras, no gasps, no dramatic objections, just the gentle shuffling of papers, the creak of worn leather chairs, and the sound of my own breathing as I sat beside Maribel, hands folded in my lap. Judge Kincaid looked the same as the last time. Sharp, composed, with eyes that didn't blink more than necessary. She reviewed the documents silently before speaking. After reviewing the circumstances, previous testimony, and submitted evidence, she began, this court grants full and permanent guardianship of Talon and Saren Winchester to Ms. Junia Cooper. The words hit like an exhale I'd been holding for a year. All prior visitation rights submitted by Ms. Selene Winchester are hereby revoked until further reevaluation. I looked across the room. Selene didn't cry this time. She didn't speak. She sat perfectly still, face unreadable, like someone watching the end of a show she no longer had a role in. "This is not punishment," Judge Kincaid added. "This is consequence." We walked out into the blinding August sun, and the heat felt different, lighter. Maribel handed me the final decree. I unfolded the paper slowly, reading the first line aloud under my breath. "This document confirms permanent legal custody to Junia Cooper, guardian in action, intent, and love." I stood there for a moment with that sentence in my hands. Sometimes you don't win. Sometimes you take back what was already yours. 2 days later, we hosted Family Day in the backyard. Talon and Seren hung streamers along the fence. Saren made a sign with glitter glue that said, "1 year together," and taped it crookedly above the porch light. Neighbors came by with casseroles. My coworker dropped off cupcakes. Even Vera showed up with a jug of lemonade and a Tupperware full of potato salad. She didn't speak much, just smiled softly when she saw the twins, and didn't flinch when Talon called me Mom without hesitation. No one mentioned Celine, and I didn't either. Some ghosts don't deserve second lives. After the last guest left, we sat under the patio light strung above the yard. Seren disappeared into the house and returned holding a hand-drawn card, folded carefully. I opened it. "Thanks for being the kind of mom we needed," it read in pink crayon. Not just the one we had. Talon had written underneath it, blocky letters with hearts dotting the eyes. "Love you forever, Mommy." I didn't cry. I smiled. Not the tight, polite smile I'd worn for years, but one that came from a place far deeper, a place that knew exactly what it had cost to get here. I pinned that card on the wall above my desk the next morning, and that afternoon, I opened my laptop. An email sat waiting in my inbox with the subject line, "Speaking Opportunity, National Parenting Summit, the invisible guardian who stepped up." I read it once, then again, and I thought, I didn't become their mother in a courtroom. I became their mother the moment I stopped asking for permission to love them.